How bad has homelessness in Washington, D.C. become? And what does it say about the American promise? Beneath the gleaming dome of the U.S. Capitol lies a crisis that too often hides in plain sight. More than 5,000 men, women, and children were counted sleeping on the streets, in shelters, or in cars on a single January night in 2025. Their stories range from families uprooted by skyrocketing rents to veterans wrestling with trauma and young adults cut loose when emergency supports expired. This is not just data. It's a human saga playing out on city sidewalks and in underground metro stations. If you care about urban life beyond the usual tourist stops, hit like, drop a comment about what surprised you most, and subscribe to our channel for in-depth looks at America's hidden corners. From this starting point, let's dive into today's reality on the ground. Current state of homelessness in Washington, D.C. On January 29, 2025, the Department of Human Services counted 5,138 people living without stable housing in the district proper. Including the broader metropolitan area, that figure jumps to nearly 9,660, down slightly from the year before, but still nearly 1 in every 800 residents. What factors keep so many tethered to life in shelters or the streets instead of a permanent address? Walking through the alleys of Shaw, the encampments by Union Station, and the shelter queues near 14th Street, you see more than tents and sleeping bags. You see lives on pause. Children wrap themselves in hand-me-down coats. Parents clutching grocery bags transformed into makeshift backpacks. Professionals with college degrees lined up for hot meals. These scenes would shame any city that prides itself on opportunity. Yet amid the bustle of government buildings and world-class museums, Washington's homelessness has proved surprisingly resilient. Point-in-time counts show a 9% dip since 2024 and a 19% drop compared to 2020, thanks to targeted outreach and emergency rentals vouchers. But that improvement masked shifting patterns. Family homelessness fell by 18%, while single adults only saw a 4.5% reduction, and transitional age youth, those between 18 and 24, remain alarmingly overrepresented. This travel documentary-style examination of DC's streets reveals both progress and persistent gaps. Shelters reach capacity nightly. Overflow on sidewalks is a constant. In neighborhoods like Columbia Heights, every empty lot can become a temporary camp, while in downtown corridors, clean sweeps displace encampments but rarely deliver long-term solutions. As we move to uncover why so many slip through the cracks, consider this: with so much visibility, federal funding, nonprofits, volunteer networks, why does the problem endure? Next, we'll explore the root causes driving these troubling numbers. Root causes behind the crisis. At its heart, Washington's homelessness surge reflects a mismatch between housing costs and household incomes. Average rents in the district now exceed $2,200 a month, and even with city subsidies. Many low-wage workers can't cover a security deposit plus first and last month's rent. Add a spike in inflation to the mix, and families live paycheck to paycheck. One medical emergency or car repair away from eviction. But the story goes deeper than dollars and cents. In recent years, the end-of-pandemic relief programs left thousands without unemployment top-ups or eviction protections. That rollback stripped away a safety net just as landlords began hiking rents in gentrifying corridors. Neighborhoods once affordable for hourly workers, like Petworth and Brooklyn, saw new luxury apartments pushing out long-time residents. Does that pattern surprise you, given DC's wealth of government jobs and nonprofit offices? Meanwhile, mental health challenges and substance use disorders further entangle people in homelessness. Limited access to integrated health services means many cycles between shelters, hospitals, and the streets. The district's health clinics are stretched thin, and stigma around psychiatric care often dissuades individuals from seeking help until crisis point. Racial and economic inequities also play a decisive role. Black residents, who make up roughly half of the district's population, represent nearly two-thirds of those experiencing homelessness. Generations of discriminatory housing policies, school segregation, and job market barriers have concentrated vulnerability in certain communities, turning systemic neglect into personal hardship. Social welfare and support systems in Washington, D.C. In response to these intertwined pressures, the district launched a coordinated assessment system designed to triage cases and match individuals with the right services. That framework, known as CHP, or Coordinated Assessment and Housing Placement, evaluates each person's risk factors, health needs, and family situation to determine whether emergency shelter, rapid rehousing vouchers, or long-term supportive housing is most appropriate. Alongside CHP sits a pair of diversion programs. Shelter diversion offers legal counsel and financial assistance to families facing eviction, aiming to keep them housed rather than sending them into shelter queues. Eviction prevention adds mediation services for landlords and tenants, reducing conflict and the need for costly court battles. Collectively, these measures channel resources toward early intervention, stopping many from ever becoming homeless in the first place. For those already on the streets, rapid rehousing and permanent supportive housing provide two life-changing pathways. Rapid rehousing delivers short-term rental assistance and case management, helping participants secure an apartment and gradually transition back to self-sufficiency. Permanent supportive housing pairs deeply affordable units with wraparound services, mental health counseling, job training, and substance use treatment, anchoring stability for individuals with chronic needs. In 2024 alone, these programs housed more than 900 households. By mid-2025, over 550 additional families and individuals had moved into permanent placements. As this travel documentary of social innovation shows, the city also experimented with bridge housing for high-need populations, non-congregate sites. Think family-style apartments rather than dorm-like shelters, offer private rooms, 3 meals a day, laundry facilities, and on-site support staff. More than 100 of these beds came online in 2024, and plans are underway to add a second facility by year's end. Yet gaps remain. Even the best systems can't fully compensate for inadequate funding or bureaucratic delays. Case managers report waitlists for counseling services, and some clients cycle back into homelessness when programs end or funding dries up. Questions linger. Could these supports serve as a model for other cities? Or do they simply paper over deeper societal divides? With these welfare tools in place, the next chapter will examine the policy decisions shaping DC's response and how they compare to efforts in New York and Seattle. Government solutions in Washington, D.C. In Washington, D.C., local leaders have marshaled a suite of initiatives under the banner of Homeward DC 2.0, aiming to make homelessness rare, brief, and non-recurring. This strategy combines prevention, rapid rehousing, supportive housing, and cross-agency coordination. On the prevention front, grants and legal aid are funneled to tenants at risk of eviction through programs like shelter diversion and eviction prevention. These services intervene before families ever enter a shelter line, providing emergency funds, lease mediation, and connections to income supports. For those already experiencing homelessness, the front line is Coordinated Assessment and Housing Placement, CHP. Every individual or household undergoes a standardized intake that evaluates health needs, risk factors, and housing barriers. That data drives decisions about whether a rapid rehousing voucher, a spot in permanent supportive housing, or referral to a specialized program best fits. In 2024, CHP helped over 900 households secure stable housing. By mid-2025, more than 550 additional participants had moved into permanent units. Project Reconnect takes a different tack, targeting people who cycle in and out of street homelessness but resist traditional shelter models. Outreach teams engage individuals where they live, under freeway overpasses or in park encampments, offering non-congregate bridge housing and tailored case management. Bridge housing sites provide private rooms, meals, laundry, and on-site behavioral health support. In 2024 alone, D.C. added 100 bridge housing beds and plans a second facility before the end of the year. Behind the scenes, the front door navigation tool streamlines referrals across city agencies and nonprofits. What once took weeks of paperwork now takes days, thanks to a shared database that tracks vacancies, client progress, and service gaps in real time. Peer Case Management Institute partners with Howard University to train former clients as peer case managers, bringing lived experience to the front lines and improving trust and engagement. Taken together, these elements form a patchwork safety net that catches many who would otherwise fall through. Yet every program has capacity limits, and funding shortfalls leave waiting lists for behavioral health services and long-term supportive housing. The question isn't whether DC has the right tools. It's whether there's enough scale and sustained investment to wield them effectively. As we turn to compare these efforts with those in other major cities, let's see how New York's approach stacks up. Comparison with New York and Seattle. New York City, with its roughly 8.5 million residents, operates under a legal right to shelter that guarantees any eligible person a bed in a municipal facility. That guarantee drives a nightly census of around 120,000 individuals in shelters, an order of magnitude higher than DC's count. The system is funded through a combination of city, state, and federal dollars, totaling more than $3 billion annually for shelter operations, rental assistance, and supportive housing construction. The city's rapid rehousing programs mirror DC's, but on a larger scale. In 2024, New York housed over 20,000 households through short-term rental subsidies paired with case management. Permanent supportive housing in NYC has expanded to more than 30,000 units citywide, thanks to bond measures and inclusionary zoning policies that require developers to set aside affordable units. However, waitlists for permanent supportive apartments can stretch years, and rising rents in the private market continue to squeeze low-income families. Unlike DC's emphasis on diversion, New York channels most prevention efforts through family eviction prevention supplement and home-based programs. Those initiatives provide rental arrears assistance, mediation, and landlord-tenant liaison services, but face high demand and limited outreach capacity. Rapidly changing eligibility rules and varying levels of landlord participation sometimes blunt their effectiveness. New York's scale gives it both advantages and liabilities. The right to shelter ensures no one literally camps out on the streets overnight, but shelter conditions, crowded dorms, shared bathrooms, can feel institutional and temporary. In contrast, DC's bridge housing model prioritizes private rooms, a feature NYC is only beginning to pilot. The sheer size of New York's system also makes nimble policy shifts difficult. Layered bureaucracies slow innovation, whereas DC's smaller scale allows faster piloting of new approaches. Seattle's homeless count hovers around 16,000 people in a metro area of roughly 750,000 residents, placing it among the highest per capita rates nationally. The One Seattle Homelessness Action Plan, launched in 2022, set targets for reducing homelessness by 50% within 5 years through investments in affordable housing, crisis response, and preventative services. Key to Seattle's strategy is the Jumpstart payroll tax on high-earning households and businesses, which has raised hundreds of millions of dollars for affordable housing and social services since its inception. That revenue funds both permanent supportive units and emergency shelter expansions, as well as mobile outreach teams staffed by mental health professionals and peer navigators. Seattle takes a harm reduction approach to encampments, designating sanctioned sites with sanitation facilities, sharps disposal, and on-site case management. This marks a departure from the sweep and clear tactics seen elsewhere. Sanctioned encampments offer stability and wraparound care, enabling residents to access housing programs without the trauma of repeated displacements. Despite these innovations, Seattle struggles with housing supply. Renters face average studio prices over $1,500 a month, and zoning restrictions limit the city's ability to build new multifamily housing. The plan to rezone commercial corridors for mixed-use development has sparked neighborhood pushback, stalling progress. Furthermore, while Jumpstart funding is substantial, it must compete with rising construction costs and capacity constraints among nonprofit housing developers. Seattle's balanced mix of prevention, crisis response, and sanctioned shelter reflects lessons learned from both East and West Coast peers. Yet the city's slower permit processes and local opposition have sometimes dampened momentum. Having examined D.C., New York, and Seattle, we can now draw broader lessons about what works and what misses the mark when tackling urban homelessness. Conclusion. Washington, D.C.'s suite of prevention and housing interventions under Homeward DC 2.0 shows that a relatively small system can innovate quickly, leveraging coordinated assessments, diversion services, and bridge housing to make homelessness less common and less prolonged. Meanwhile, New York's right to shelter model guarantees basic safety, but grapples with scale and shelter quality. And Seattle's harm reduction encampments and dedicated tax revenue highlight the power and the limits of local funding mechanisms. Across all three cities, the central challenge remains the gap between housing costs and household incomes, compounded by uneven access to health and behavioral supports. No single policy fixes everything. Sustainable progress requires a mosaic of early prevention, rapid rehousing, permanent supportive units, and crisis response flex points tailored to local contexts. These insights expose the human stories behind iconic skylines and remind us that urban prosperity cannot shine while any resident sleeps on the streets. If you found this travel documentary exploration valuable, share your thoughts below, like the video, and subscribe for more journeys into America's hidden challenges.